viewers, welcome to CEC lectures. Myself Dr. Preeti Jagwani. I am from Department of Computer Science, Aryabhat College, University of Delhi. So in this series of our introduction to programming using C++, presently we are learning a topic of inheritance, and in the previous lectures we have seen what actually inheritance is and what are the different visibility modes attached with the inheritance. Now as per today's agenda we will be looking into types of inheritance. So just give you a quick recap. Basically inheritance is a process of object oriented programming paradigm in which the members of one particular class are inherited by another class. So whose members are inherited, that class is known as base class or parent class, and the class who is going to inherit the members is known as child class or subclass. So types of inheritance, when we talk about in C++, there are basically 5 types of inheritance, and what is the basis of categorization of these types is actually how your derived class or how the child class is going to inherit the features, inherit the members from the base class. And there are 5 types, namely single inheritance, multiple inheritance, multi-level inheritance, hierarchical inheritance, and hybrid inheritance. So we will be taking these all these 5 types into details. So in order to begin with, let us start with single inheritance. So single inheritance being the kind of first and I can say very primitive type of inheritance among all the 5. That's the most basic one. What is happening in single inheritance is there is a single class which inherits the properties of a base class. So whenever I say that there is a single class, that means definitely there are other type of inheritance in which there can be multiple classes, but presently we are focusing only on the single inheritance. So single class inheriting properties of the base class, one base class obviously, is known as single inheritance. And what happens in this single inheritance is all the data members of the base class will be accessed by the derived class according to the visibility mode. So here visibility mode could be private, visibility mode could be public, or visibility mode could be protected. So whatever visibility mode has been specified while inheriting the base class, according to that specified visibility mode, the data members of base class will be accessed by the derived class. So if we can see it in the form of a figure, this is the most fundamental. We have one base class and then its elements or its features are derived class. That's the most basic way to we can say represent the single inheritance using a figure. Now coming to what is the general syntax. So whenever we talk about the general syntax, that means how it is going to be we can say programmatically defined. So here we will be having one base class named as base class 1, and there is going to be a class definition of that base class. Similarly, while we are defining the derived class, we have to specify that this derived class is a class which is going to inherit the features of base class, and what features will be inherited and in which mode will be inherited, that is defined by visibility mode. Visibility mode we have covered in greater detail in our previous lectures. So while defining the derived class, we will write class and the name of the class, which is, let's say we have taken derived underscore class, then a single colon. After that single colon we have to have a visibility mode. This visibility mode could be public, private, or protected depending upon the requirement of application. And this visibility mode says that this derived class is actually inheriting the base class. So after visibility mode we need to write the name of the base class. So for example, we have a class A which is the base class and class B which is the derived class. So we will say class B colon public, private, or protected, and then B, and then we will define the whole kind of features or definition of the class B, which is our derived class. So after this syntax, let us try to kind of see this with the help of a complete example, that how kind of these classes or the features of a particular class can be inherited in another class. So first, after this standard IOStream and namespace standard, we are using a class and then this class is named as electronic device. Now take this class electronic device as a base class, because this is not specifying any class to be inherited into it, neither it is defining any visibility mode after the colon. So that means this is our base class. So class electronic device, in which there is nothing except one constructor, and when I am talking about constructor, ideally it has to be in the public section, otherwise you will not be able to create the object. So that's a kind of very basic fundamental which we have already read a number of times. So in class electronic device, in the public section, there is your what you call one constructor electronic device, and that constructor is nothing but it is containing one simple statement of printing which says I am an electronic device, followed by two slashes, two line changes, and that's the definition of this electronic device. So just one class having a simple constructor with one cout statement. Now taking this electronic device as the base class, we will be defining one another derived class or one another child class, and that derived class is named as computer. So now here, now in this situation, what are we trying to do? We actually want to inherit this electronic device for the class computer, which is the derived class, and we want to inherit this electronic device into in using the visibility mode, which is public. So in public visibility mode, we are deriving electronic device class, which is the parent class, to the class computer, which is the base class. So class computer colon public visibility mode, and then electronic device, which is name of the base class. And in this we have defined one more constructor, which is the constructor of the derived class, and as it is the constructor of the derived class which is named as computer, so we have one function computer followed by a cout statement, and this is what about the definition of class computer. So till this point, in single inheritance, what we have done, we have taken one base class, which is class electronic device. We have taken another class, which is class computer, which is the derived class, and this class computer is inheriting electronic device class into public mode. Now electronic device class was having only one public member function, which was nothing but the constructor. So similarly here you can imagine this class computer as two public members. One is its own constructor, which is named as computer, and another one the member function, which is derived from the class electronic device, and that is nothing but the constructor electronic device. So now imagine this class computer having two member functions, one is its own constructor, another one is having the constructor of the electronic device class, which is the base class. Now because it has been kind of, we can say, derived in public mode, so in public mode you are aware that whenever we are defining the public as the visibility mode, the public members of the base class will be taken as the public members of the derived class also. So now class computer is having two public members, computer and electronic device, both the constructor of base class and the derived class here. Now coming to the main function, integer main, we have created an object of the derived class. Now here this is something which is kind of, we can say, very important. Which object we have created? We have created the object of derived class, which is computer OBJ. Now what will happen? Ideally, in the normal situation, when we are not talking about inheritance, this particular creation of the object of class computer will, we can say, call the constructor of its own, which is computer. But now this class computer is having, one constructor of its own and one constructor in the public section, which is derived from its base class. So defining or creation of the object of derived class will call the constructor of base class and the constructor of derived class both. So as output, what are we expecting is, which is something shown here on the screen, that is, I am an electronic device which is an cout statement coming from the base class, and I am a computer which is the cout statement coming from the constructor of the object class. So both of the constructor have been called, but please remember that we have just created the object of the derived class. Categorically we have not, specifically, explicitly we have not created the object of the base class, but as base class object is base class constructor is inherited by the derived class computer. So whenever we are creating the object of the class computer, then in that situation it is calling both the constructor of the base class as well as of the derived class. Also, please notice the sequence. It is saying I am an electronic device at the first place, and on the second place it is saying I am a computer. So that essentially means that first it is calling the constructor of the derived base class, and then it is calling the constructor of its own, which is the derived class. So in this example we have seen the scenario of single inheritance, in which there was a base class and there was a derived class, and whenever we are inheriting the base class in public visibility mode, all the public members of the base class will be taken as the public members of the derived class, as a result of which whenever we are saying computer OBJ, that means we are creating an object of the derived class. It is calling both the constructor, it is calling the constructor taken from the base class, which is electronic device, and it is obviously calling its own constructor also, which is named as computer. So this is what is happening, and the sequence is first the base class and then the derived class constructor is being called. So this is what actually has happened in the whole scenario. And since there is a single derived class inheriting a single base class, this is what you call the single inheritance. And as the subclass computer inherits the base class electronic device in a public mode, all the public and protected members of the class electronic device are directly accessible to the class computer as defined in the definition, or as defined according to the visibility mode public. Now this was the example of single inheritance. Now when we talk about the next type, so this was the single inheritance was the first type among the type of inheritance. Second, we are here to cover the second type, which is multiple inheritance. So in multiple inheritance, whenever saying I am multiple, so that means here in this scenario of multiple inheritance, a class can inherit or class can derive the characteristics of multiple classes. So that we can say that one derived class can have more than one base classes. So for example, I am having class A and class B, and there is a class C, and now your class C is taking class A as its base class, also taking class B as its base class too. But in this situation, when class A is being inherited, it may be inherited using a different kind of visibility mode or access specifier, and class B can be taken or can be inherited in a separate visibility mode. So basically we can say we can specify the visibility modes separately for all the base classes at the time of inheritance. The bottom line here is we need not to have a same or similar visibility mode for all the base classes, because the base classes can be multiple. There can be 2, there can be 3, or there can be more than that, depending upon the application requirement. All the base classes can have separate visibility modes here. So the derived class can derive the joint features of all those classes, or more specifically we can say the derived class can take the features of all these classes jointly, of all these base classes, or we can say the data members of the base classes are accessed by the derived or the child class, again depending upon the access specifier, whatever access specifier, whatever visibility mode you have mentioned, according to that visibility mode the derived class can enjoy the features of the base class. Looking at the figure, we can say here we have 3 classes, let us say base class 1, base class 2 and base class 3. All these base classes are kind of being, we can say, derived by the derived class. So here you can see there is one derived class, but the number of base classes is more. We have base class 1, base class 2 and base class 3. So multiple base classes or multiple parent classes, hence the name multiple inheritance. Now let us see the syntax. So here we have class which is base class 1 and its definition, another class base class 2 and its definition. Now we have 2 base classes, base class 1 and base class 2, and whenever we defining a derived class who is actually requiring to inherit these 2 base classes using different visibility modes, we will say in the syntax that class, name of the derived class, let us say derived class, then colon visibility mode 1. For example, base class 1 has to be inherited in public modes. We will say colon public base class 1, comma protected base class 2. So in this situation, what are we trying to specify? We are trying to specify that there is a derived class named as derived underscore class having 2 base classes. One base class is base class 1, which is being derived or which is being inherited in the we can say public mode, and another base class which is base class 2 is being inherited in the another mode which is protected. So even if we have for public visibility mode for both the classes, we need to specify it separately. That means we will say class derived class colon public base class 1 comma public base class 2. We cannot say public base class 1 comma base class 2, this will not go. So visibility mode has to be there with each and every base class, and then we have the class definition of the derived class. So here we can say derived class is having 2 base classes, hence it is having kind of we can say multiple base classes. So multiple inheritance is there, and the visibility mode has to be specified for each base class while declaring the derived class. That is what I have already told you. Now looking into the example, again we are taking the same scenario of a class electronic device which is having one constructor, and as I am saying constructor, it is in the public section. So Cout constructor is saying just a simple plain statement, Cout I am an electronic device, and there that is what the kind of we can say end of this electronic device class. Another class is the class computer, which is also having one constructor in public mode, which is computer, and having C out I am a computer as the single statement. Now these are two classes, class electronic device and class computer. We can say the two base classes. Now when we are inheriting these two classes, which is our class electronic device and class computer, for the next class, let us say a class C, which is named as class Linux based. So how are we doing it here? So class Linux based colon public electronic device comma public computer. So the name of the base class 1 preceded by the access specifier mode, and similarly access specifier mode for the base class 2 followed by the name of the base class, and hence we can have whatever definition we want to write. Presently in this section we have not written any definition of the class Linux based, but you can have one constructor there. One constructor or whatever is the requirement of your application can go as the definition of the class of the derived class. Now coming to the integer main, which is the main function, we have created one object of this derived class which is Linux based. Now what will happen whenever we are creating an object of this class? As we have seen in the single inheritance, similar situation will kind of happen here, that constructor of base class A, which is our electronic device, and constructor of another base class, which is your class computer, both will be called, and hence we will be having the output as I am an electronic device and I am a computer. I am an electronic device, this is the statement which is coming from the base class 1, which is nothing but electronic device, and the second one, which is I am a computer, is coming from the base class 2, which is the computer. Now again coming to the sequence, now why I am a computer is on the second line and I am an electronic device is being called first, because when we have declared our derived class, we have first called the electronic device class and then we have called the class computer, and hence this output that electronic device constructor is being called first, which is followed by the constructor of the computer class. And imagine the situation or imagine the scenario in which we have kind of written one more constructor of the derived class itself, that I am in Linux based. So I am in Linux based will be after this I am in computer. So first will be I am an electronic device, then I am a computer, and then I am a Linux based device, whatever you have written or whatever you will write there. So in the above example we have separate two base classes, and these two base classes are derived by Linux based, creating a scenario of multiple inheritance. The derived class Linux based has inherit the attributes of both the classes in public mode, and whenever the object of the derived class is being created, it calls the constructor of both the base classes, and this was the scenario of multiple inheritance. And here is a list of references which was used in preparation of this lecture. Hope you had a fruitful learning. Thank you for a patient hearing.